The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices. Central Arkansas, surrounding areas, and the nation. Get ready. Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855-525-5683. So here's your host, David W. Coleman. It's Monday, and you know what that means? That means it's another edition of Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me. If you'd like to join the show, you can also hit me up on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget, when you go out to YouTube, you can catch all of the recorded shows, the videos of previous Black Focus Radio shows. So just go out, and by the way, when you're out there, please like, share, and subscribe. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to get those numbers up on YouTube. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you have a show topic, or if you'd like to come on the show, then please give me a call, or better still, give me an email. Send me one at blackfocusradio@gmail.com. And speaking of emails, let's talk about sponsors. Sponsors, joynetradio.com. Make sure you go out and support Joynet Radio for bringing this show to you every Monday in the Little Rock area and throughout the week. And, of course, ribrub.com. That's RIBBRUBB.com. Bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh, yeah. Come on, give me your hand and let me take you down through barbecue land. Okay? So, by the way, don't forget to join the one-man campaign to get rid of the N-word. In other words, just don't say it, okay? There's no reason to say it at all, and please, let's stop using that derogatory term to refer to our brothers and our sisters. Can we do that? I believe we can. We just have to do it. You know what I'm saying? We just have to do it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, a lot of stuff to talk about today, of course. Black Facts will be coming up here in just a moment. I've got an interesting piece I'm calling I Met an Alien. Wait till I tell you about this. Well, it's going to be crazy. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about vaccinations, okay? And we're also going to talk about Epstien. We got to keep that in the forefront. Everything that I see on Epstien, I try to repost to my wall. And last but not least is what we must do. I like to try to give you a solution instead of just telling you about the problems, what we must do. Okay? And I'll probably circle back on something I talked about last week about what Democrats need to do in order to get people to just stop voting for Republicans. It's pretty clear now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But before we do all that, let's do Black Facts.
Dynamic Black Facts. Our culture, our history, our people.
Did you know that some of the most cruel practices of slavery weren't just about forceful and hard labor? Beyond what you know is an even darker truth, one that is not taught in schools. Imagine a scenario where you are being perceived as a property instead of a human. You would only be valued for your ability to produce more property. This was the harsh reality of breeding slaves in America. It was a system that was designed to dehumanize, exploit, and make profit from black individuals in treacherous ways that most history books did not capture. This isn't just history, but a reminder that remains in mind and is not easily forgotten of how deeply racism ate deep into the fabric of society. Slave breeding wasn't formed as a result of slavery. It was a calculated and intentional act that was inspired by greed and white power. Yet, many individuals have no idea of what the full story is. Why? Acknowledging it means confronting a racial legacy that has severely affected black communities to this very day. In this video, we'll expose the history of silence and denial to reveal 10 shocking facts about slave breeding. Facts that your history teacher never taught in class. will not only expose these hidden truths, but also honor the resilience and humanity of those who endured terrible sufferings. Let's dive in. Fact 1. The systematic dehumanization of black bodies. Right from the very beginning, slavery wasn't just about controlling labor, but about controlling every fragment of black lives, including their bodies. Slave breeding was one of the most horrifying methods they controlled blacks. Enslaved people were not perceived as human beings who had thoughts, emotions, and aspirations for their future. Instead, they were belittled and compared to mere commodities for economic gain. As if that wasn't enough, they were treated like livestock to be bred and multiplied for profit. This act of dehumanization was deliberately and systematically strategized. Plantation owners did not just exploit the labor of enslaved people, they also exploited their ability to reproduce. Enslaved women were not valued for their humanity, but for their capacity to give birth to more enslaved children who would eventually be converted to property. This meant that enslaved men and women were completely denied ownership over their bodies and lives. One of the most dreadful aspects of this horrific practice was how it normalized viewing black people as commodities. Historical records show that enslaved children were often listed in ledgers alongside livestock, tools, and crops. How pathetic. Advertisements for enslaved women would sometimes include features of their breeding potential, which reduces them to nothing more than a commodity meant for profit. This thought wasn't limited to the plantations alone, but was also imbibed into laws, policies, and cultural attitudes. White society justified the atrocities of slavery and created a foundation for systemic racism that persists to this day by dehumanizing black people. This isn't just about knowing what happened in the past, but about recognizing how the dehumanization of black bodies was focused on slavery and how its legacy continues to shape the world we live in. This is why it's so critical to confront these hidden historical truths, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. Fact 2. Economic incentives for slave breeding. The abolition of the international slave trade in 1808 wasn't the end of slavery in America. Instead, it forced plantation owners and slaveholders to find new methods of growing and sustaining their enslaved labor force. Slave breeding was a calculated system of exploitation designed to maximize profits by turning enslaved black individuals into self-multiplying assets. Enslaved people were no longer just laborers, they became a renewable commodity. Enslaved women in particular were perceived as invaluable because their ability to bear children directly increased the wealth of their enslavers. Each child born into slavery was automatically enslaved for life. This made them become another source of unpaid labor or another stock to be sold on the market. Slaveholders developed detailed breeding strategies like pairing strong, healthy men with women who were seen as good breeders. These pairings were often forced without emotions or regard for consent or the personal desires of the individuals involved. Some plantation owners even resorted to employing rape to ensure the birth of more enslaved children. This was beyond just economic survival for white slaveholders, but was about greed and the relentless pursuit of profit at the expense of human rights and dignity. This vicious act left open wounds that continue to affect black communities today. Fact 3. Forced mating practices. Slave breeding wasn't just about economics, but was also characterized by control, power, and dehumanization at the most intimate level. One of the most alarming scenarios of this practice was the forced mating and labor of enslaved individuals. Plantation owners paired their enslaved captives solely based on physical attributes that they believed would produce the best offspring. Consent was never a factor, and the emotional and psychological toll on those subjected to this was devastating. Men who were enslaved were often referred to as studs, a term that stripped them of humanity and reduced them to their reproductive capabilities. These men were forced to impregnate multiple women, usually in dozens. It became an integral part of the plantation's breeding strategy. Enslaved women, on the other hand, were forced into relationships with men they didn't choose or subjected to sexual violence from their enslavers. Plantation owners would monitor the reproductive cycles of enslaved women and treat them like breeding stock. If a woman failed to conceive, she might be punished, sold, or exchanged with someone deemed more fertile. Those who bore children were often forced back into labor shortly after giving birth, with no time to recover physically or emotionally, or even heal from the pain of childbirth. This wasn't just a violation of the black bodies, but a theft of their autonomy and humanity. Families and genuine relationships were destroyed by this practice. They had no control over their most personal choices, and any attempts to resist could lead to brutal punishment. Fact 4. Sexual exploitation of enslaved women. One of the most horrific aspects of slave breeding was the act of sexual exploitation of enslaved women. These women were extremely oppressed, treated as property, and subjected to relentless gendered violence. Enslaved women were often raped by their owners, overseers, and other white men in upper positions of power. This act wasn't just an assertion of control, but also to force pregnancies that would bring more enslaved children. For white enslavers, this sexual violence was both a tool and a strategy. Enslaved women were perceived as reproductive assets whose children could either serve as future laborers or be sold for profit. This commodification of black women's bodies kept their lives under threat of sexual violence. The power imbalance made enslaved women defenseless. Any move to refuse or resist could result in severe punishment like physical beatings or being sold away from their families. Even young girls were not exempted, with many enslaved women subjected to sexual exploitation from a very young age. Enslaved women usually faced additional cruelty when their children were taken away from them and sold to other plantations. This tore apart any sense of maternal connection or stability between them and their children. Fact 5. The role of laws and policies. The institution of slavery in America wasn't just upheld by brute force, but was fostered by laws and policies deliberately designed to propagate racial oppression and economic exploitation. One of the most insidious examples is the doctrine of partus sequitur ventrum, a legal principle that was established in colonial Virginia in 1662. This law stated that the status of a child followed that of the mother, meaning that if a woman was enslaved, her child would also be enslaved at birth. This policy promoted the practice of slave breeding. Enslavers were motivated to force enslaved women to bear children, because every child born increased their property without the need for purchase since it was already made legal. It was a self-sustaining system that turned black lives into commodities and also entrenched slavery as an inheritable condition. Other laws further supported this inhumane practice. Slave codes across the South ensured that enslaved people had no legal rights to their bodies, marriages, or families. These legal policies meant that enslavers could exploit and control reproduction without fear of consequences. Women who were raped by their enslavers had no recourse to justice, and children born from these acts of violence were often claimed as assets by their father enslavers. The underground nature of these policies shows how deeply slavery was intertwined with the legal fabric of the United States. These laws were not accidental, but stated to sustain white supremacy and the economic benefits of slavery. Fact 6. The breaking of black families. One of the most horrific aspects of slave breeding was its deliberate destruction of black family lines. Enslaved people were denied the right to build legally recognized families, and any bonds they managed to build were at risk of being destroyed. This was not one of those coincidental characteristics of slavery, but a deliberate, well-planned tactic to control and dehumanize black people. The breeding system was a complete disregard for familial connections. Enslaved men, women, and children could be separated at any moment, and often sold to different plantations hundreds of miles away, so they have no hope of reconnecting with one another. Mothers were being forced to watch as their children were taken from them and sold to other enslavers. Fathers were similarly stripped of their ability to protect or provide for their families, as they were reduced to that of laborers or breeders. Plantation owners saw these separations as a means of maintaining control. As they destroyed the bonds between families, they ensured that enslaved people remained emotionally isolated and less likely to organize or rebel. The destruction of families also ignited the idea that enslaved people were merely property and were incapable of building the same emotional or social bonds as their white enslavers. The psychological consequences of these separations were so severe. Testimonies from formerly enslaved people exposed the depth of the lasting trauma of losing loved ones. For many, the memory of a lost child, spouse, parent, or loved one was a wound that remained open. The breaking of families became a barrier to fostering cultural continuity, as traditions, languages, and histories became lost in the chaos of these forced separations. This planted seeds of generational trauma that continue to affect Black communities today and contribute to the disparities in wealth, education, and social stability. Fact 7. Resistance and rebellion against breeding practices. Enslaved people were not passive victims of the atrocities they went through. They resisted and fought against the horrors of slave breeding to the best of their strength, regardless of the overwhelming power of the system that intends to control every aspect of their lives. Enslaved men and women displayed incredible resilience and courage in their efforts to resist forced reproduction and reclaim autonomy over their bodies. Sabotage became one of the most common forms of resistance. For instance, enslaved women would sometimes use herbal knowledge to induce miscarriages or prevent pregnancies. With the help of this approach, they laid their enslavers' efforts to exploit their reproductive abilities all to waste. They also had other forms of resistance, like refusing to comply with forced pairings or engaging in clandestine relationships of their choosing. Escape was another form of resistance. Enslaved people would flee plantations to seek freedom and also to escape forced breeding. Although these journeys were very dangerous, they symbolized a refusal to accept the dehumanizing conditions imposed upon them. Acts of rebellion were not always individual. They sometimes had communal elements. Enslaved people supported and protected each other and shared knowledge and strategies to resist their oppressors. These acts of solidarity were vital in sustaining hope and a sense of humanity amid these relentless brutalities. Resistance to slave breeding was a testament to the enduring spirit and resilience of Black people during slavery. Their actions, which are often carried out in secrecy and at great personal risk, were bold declarations of their humanity in the face of a system determined to strip it away. By liking this video, we honor the strength and courage of those who fought against the dehumanization of slave breeding. Fact 8. The impact on Black motherhood. The practice of slave breeding had a significant and harrowing impact on Black motherhood. Enslaved women were forced to bear children out of excruciating pain and torture, instead of love or choice, but as a means of profit for their enslavers. The experience of motherhood for these women was filled with unimaginable pain, as the natural joys of raising a child were dominated by the constant threat of separation and exploitation. For enslaved mothers, pregnancy was not a reason for celebration, but a reminder of the oppression and pain they go through. They were sometimes forced to continue heavy physical labor throughout their pregnancies, and many were subjected to abuse even in their most vulnerable state. After giving birth, these women were often given minimal time to recover before being sent back to work. Most times they worked with their infants strapped to their backs as they toiled in the fields. Children were often sold to other plantations at a tender age, which tears families apart and leaves mothers to grieve their loss with no hope of reunion. For many enslaved women, this cycle of bearing children only to have them taken away became a recurring nightmare rather than a reality. Enslaved women lived under threats and fear of having their children sold. This was another level of psychological torment. Fact 9. The lasting psychological trauma of slave breeding. The legacy of slave breeding went far beyond physical abuse and exploitation. It left deep psychological scars on those who relentlessly endured it, and these opened wounds have been transcended through generations. The constant dehumanization, forced separation of families, and the exploitation of reproductive power had an extreme consequence on the mental and emotional stability of enslaved people. This trauma didn't simply vanish with the abolition of slavery. It became embedded in the collective psyche of Black communities and continues to affect them today. For those subjected to the horrors of slave breeding, the psychological impact was excruciating. Enslaved people had no control over their bodies, their relationships, or even their children's futures. Enslaved women in particular suffered a brutal combination of sexual violence and emotional distress. As they were forced to bear children they had no choice in conceiving, and often no opportunity to cater for. Enslaved men also experienced psychological trauma. They were often treated as mere studs for reproduction. Their humanity was denied and belittled. They were stripped of their roles as husbands and fathers, and forced to engage in relationships not of their choosing, e.g., and at the mercies of their enslavers. This emasculation and the loss of familiar relationship led to a deep sense of powerlessness and humiliation. This psychological trauma also had long-lasting effects on future generations of black people. The trauma of slavery, including the brutalities of slave breeding, continues to manifest in the systemic racism and inequalities that we see today. Situations like the separation of family structures, economic imbalance, and emotional and psychological challenges are part of the inherited legacies of these historical injustices. These psychological scars of this era are not just stories of the past. They have opened wounds that still influence this present dispensation and remind us of the lasting legacy of racial trauma. Fact 10. The erasure of slave breeding from history. One of the most iconic aspects of slave breeding is how it has been systematically wiped off from the historical narratives. For decades, the brutality of forced breeding and its devastating effects on black families have been largely overlooked or understated in textbooks, educational curricula, and public discourse. This erasure is a calculated approach of a larger effort to minimize the trauma of slavery and undermine the true horrors black people endured. This intricate and cruel practice of slave breeding is often sidelined to the margins of history. This omission contributes to a broader pattern of minimizing the impact of racism and slavery on black communities. The pain, sweat, and blood of black individuals were swept under the rug to make slavery seem like a more distant, isolated atrocity, rather than the deeply ingrained system of exploitation that it truly was. This historical erasure has profound implications. This act also prevents future generations from understanding the deep, generational trauma that still lingers in black communities today. In recent years, however, there has been an increasing movement to uncover and document these erased narratives. Scholars, activists, and descendants of enslaved people are working tirelessly to bring the history of slave breeding to light and ensure that the voices of those who endured it are heard and that their suffering is acknowledged. Although the process of historical reclamation is difficult, it is essential for healing and for making sure that the legacy of slavery is understood in its full brutal context. Thank you for watching. Share it with the first person that comes to your mind. Let's spread the truth about Black history. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
Keep listening to Black Focus Radio for more dynamic Black facts, our culture, our history, our people on joynetradio.com.
Hope you enjoyed that Black fact. Of course, I'm doing a lot of Black facts this year. Well, I mean, I've been doing Black facts since we've been doing the show, but I think it's even more important now because there are some people out there who believe that slavery wasn't that bad. So that particular Black fact sheds a lot of light on just how slavery was bad. Okay, we're going to continue to do this. We're not going to let them rewrite history. We're going to speak truth to power, as we do every week on Black Focus Radio. We've got to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. It's called Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices on joynetradio.com.
Hi, I'm David W. Coleman, host of Black Focus Radio and the weekly sports magazine. We here at joynetradio.com would like to thank you for all the love and support you've given us. Our goal is to keep you inspired and informed daily with quality programming from gospel music, news, talk, and sports. Log on to joynetradio.com for the program lineup, and while there, be sure to make a donation. Then download our app and carry us anywhere in the world. Please continue to spread the word about joynetradio.com. And if you are an entrepreneur or have an upcoming event or you'd like to start a show, let the professional writers and producers here at joynetradio.com help you get the word out. Call me at 615-554-0568 for more details. In the meantime, stay informed and inspired daily right here on joynetradio.com. David W. Coleman here for Coleman's Dynamic Rib Rub and Rib Nuts. Go to ribrub.com, that's RIBBRUBB.com right now, and stock up on the best dry marinades for baking, grilling, and smoking your favorite meats. 3 great flavors, hot and spicy, original, and scorching. Try them at your next cookout and you will shout, bake it, grill it, shake it, oh yeah! Only one place to get Coleman's Dynamic products, That's ribrub.com. Easy to order, and I'll ship direct to you or to friends and family anywhere in the United States. While on the site, be sure to check out other great items, especially the rib nuts. Who'd have thunk it? Peanuts sauteed in a barbecue marinade? That's just crazy good. Get them at ribrub.com right now, along with other great recipes. That's ribrub.com. If you don't like my rib rub or rib nuts, I'll give you money back. Do it today. That's Coleman's Dynamic Products at ribrub.com.
Welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me. If you'd like to join the show, excuse me, I gotta take a sip of water. I should have did this in the break, but I'm sorry. Oh, man, it is nothing like mountain cold spring water. I'm gonna tell you. Now, I didn't go to the mountains to get this spring water. I purchased it. But if you've never been up in the mountains, and I have, and drank spring water, where it's cold when it comes over the rocky ledge, and you just put your canteen under it, and oh God, it is so wonderful. But anyway, I've actually, those of you who are in Arkansas, believe it or not, I've actually drank water from the Arkansas River and the Mississippi. They say that's why your ass crazy now. But anyway, let's get back to the show. So I have, as many of you all know, I live in the DMV area. And one thing that I've enjoyed living here is the fact that I meet all kinds of people. Now, those of you who know me, y'all know I talk to anybody. Okay, I don't care where you're from, what you look like. You can have a trunk coming out the side of your head. I'm gonna say, hey man, don't that hurt? You know, I'm gonna talk to you. That's just how I am. Some people say, well, you're kind of standoffish. Well, you know, I just don't believe in BS. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so what I do here in the Baltimore area part-time, it's afforded me an opportunity to meet a lot of different people. And go into a lot of different neighborhoods as well. And so I ran into, and you know, you've heard me tell stories about how I've met people and this, that, and the other. These are real people. This is not something that I make up. These are people that I meet. So I'm calling this segment, I Met an Alien. Okay? And it reminds me, or it reinforces why Black history is important. Because I met an alien this last week that I was flabbergasted. Okay? Let me tell you the story. So, met this young man. He looked African when I first met him. Very dark complected. And when I got closer to him, of course, I could see there was a red hat on his head. But as I got closer to him, sure enough, there was a Make America Great hat on his head. And, you know, we were in the same space for a period of time. So, and I think we were in the same space for about 25 minutes. So I let about 10 minutes elapse, and we were listening to the radio. And on the radio, they were talking about, well, the press conference of the women who have accused, who was sexually molested by Jeffrey Epstien, was on the radio. And the young man started snickering. At the time, I didn't know he was a young man. But he started snickering at what these young women were saying. And, you know, and I mumbled aloud. I said, and whatever they were saying, I said, that's because he's a pedophile. And I think the fact that they were talking about Donald Trump, why is he hiding all that? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on in the show. But I spoke out loud and said, that's because he's a damn pedophile. And he snickered even more, and he said, fake news. And I said, huh? I said, hey, brother, no offense. I said, that hat you're wearing says Make America Great, right? And I asked him, I said, can you tell me when was the last time America was great for black people? He stuttered. This is the alien that I met. He was black. He said, and then he said something that kind of boggled my mind. He said, but I'm not black. So that I kind of let that go for a moment. I said, you're wearing a hat. I said, you might as well be wearing a Confederate flag or the stars and bars on your hat, because that's what that hat represents. And we weren't arguing, and we were just having a conversation. And he says, that's nothing but fake news. I said, so you think that those women who are accusing Jeffrey Epstein of molesting them, you think they're fake? Are you serious? He said, well, no, that stuff that they're saying about Donald Trump, that's nothing but fake news. I said, that's a mantra that comes from Fox News. I said, you hear that a lot. You hear Trump say it. You hear it's on Fox News. I said, by the way, did you know that Fox News lost a $787 million judgment for its lies it has been telling, particularly about fake news and the election? Well, that the jury was stacked against him and yada yada yada. I said, brother, you're lost. I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 18. I said, wait a minute. I said, you're only, and I stressed only, 18 years old, and you've got the unmitigated gall to wear a Make America Great hat. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, did you read, or at least did you see all of those Hispanics that was for Donald Trump prior to the election? And he said, well, I voted for Trump. He said, first time I ever voted, I voted for Trump. I said, did you hear my question? I said, did you see all of those Hispanics who was Vive le Trump and I love me some Donald Trump? Did you see them? I said, do you know what's happened to a lot of them now? He said, no. I said, many of them have been deported, or many of them and their families are being targeted. I said, here's my point. I said, see, what you don't understand is that MAGA, the hat that you're wearing and the people that you're supporting, don't give a damn about you because of your black skin. I said, just like they shipped all of them off, they're going to come for you next. He said, but they're not going to come for me. I said, really? I said, why wouldn't they come for you? He said, because I'm not black. And I looked at him and I said, man, are you crazy? I said, dude, you're blacker than I am. He said, look at my face. Look at my face. I don't have black features. Now, let me tell you, he was as black as I am. He was darker than me. I said, brother, you got thick lips. He did have an elongated nose. I said, but at the end of the day, you've got melanin in you and you are considered black. And I said, by the way, behind your back, you're not considered black. They're calling you the N-word. Oh, no, they're not. He said, my parents are not black. Both of my parents are white. I said, really? He said, I said, so you were adopted by white parents. And at that point, it began to dawn on me, oh, he's been adopted by white parents, and this is why he has this attitude. He said, no, I wasn't adopted by white parents. They birthed me. And I looked him dead in his eye. I said, dude, are you crazy? I said, do you know basic biology? I said, there is no way, unless you are some type of anomaly, that there is birth anomaly, that there is no way that two white parents could have birthed the child that looked like you. Okay. And I said, by the way, there have been instances, and I began to tell him about the British couple who had twins. One was black, one was white. Come to find out that the white one was suffering from albinism, but he was still black. And as they grew, you could tell he had black features. He just had bleached skin, no melanin in his skin. And I told him that story. I said, so unless you are a birth anomaly, there is no way that you could be white. There's no way your parents could have birthed you into this world and you look the way you do. He said, oh no, that's not true. I'm white. I said, let me ask you another question. I said, since you think you know so much at 18, and it really boggles my mind, some of these 18-year-old kids. And maybe I was the same way, that I knew the world. But I remember searching for knowledge. I didn't go into the world thinking that I knew everything about the world. I said, let me ask you another question. I said, you never came back with an answer when it came to when was the last time America was great? And at that particular day, I had on my Little Rock Central shirt. I had on a Little Rock Central shirt. I said, have you ever heard of the Little Rock Nine? Who? I said, the Little Rock Nine. I said, you see this shirt I have on? It says Little Rock Central. But there's a historical significance to this shirt as well. I said, there were 9 black kids in 1957. A couple of them, as a matter of fact, I said, Ernest Green, who was one of those kids, had the same complexion you have. I said, they were trying to get into this school, and the governor had to call out the National Guard in order for them to go to school. I said, you've never heard of them? No. I said, brother, you are truly lost. I said, do you know anything other than Martin Luther King, Malcolm X? Well, I don't really know much about either one of them. I hadn't studied much. I said, but you are wearing a Make America Great Again hat. And you don't realize that those people that you are supporting will string you up and ship you out of this country faster than you can recite your name. And by the way, what is your name? He said, my name is Mahdi. I said, Mahdi? I said, really? I said, Mahdi. I said, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like a traditional, American name. I said, who named you? He said, my parents named me. I said, so you're telling me, because your name is Islamic, if I remember correctly. So I said, you're telling me, and I'm going to read you what Mahdi stands for here in a moment, that your white parents named you an Islamic name, they birthed you. I said, let me tell you something, young brother. I'm 64 years old. I'm a history buff. I know a lot about history. And I know a lot about genetics. I'm not a geneticist and I'm not a scientist, but I follow the science. I said, you are lost. Your parents did not name you Mahdi, and they were white. Were your parents Muslim? No, they're Christian. I said, so you really think I'm stupid? Let me just read real quickly. Mahdi refers to a messianic figure in Islamic eschatology, end times belief, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad who will appear to establish justice and peace on earth. While the core concept is shared, Shia Muslims believe, see what I said? Believe that Mahdi is the 12th Imam, who is hidden but will re-emerge. This was, and you know, as I talked to him, at first I thought he was African when he said Mahdi. He spoke great English to me. That doesn't mean he didn't have, clearly he had African descent because he was, I won't say that because my son is named Akili and he's not, he does have African descent when you go down the genealogical tree. But my point is that this young man was an alien to me. You know, you almost want to get mad at those people and cuss them out, but I couldn't because I knew after I learned that he was 18 years old, I couldn't go off on him. I couldn't. And once we were done with our business, he wanted to shake my hand. I said, let me tell you something, young man. I said, I can't shake your hand. I said, when you shake someone's hand, that means that you are in agreement with those people. I just don't shake everybody's hands. I said, I don't stand for the national anthem. And I can't shake your hand because you don't stand for being black. And we said our farewells. I said, I wish you peace. And I said, do something else for your life and go read some history about black people. And we parted ways. That disturbed me all day. Because here was a young black male whose future is in the balance of those who are in the White House, and he's running around and supporting that stupidity. Now, there are a lot of black people who are doing that. There are a lot of black Republicans and so-called black conservatives and so on and so forth. But here was a young man who was only 18 years old, clearly didn't understand the social, economic, and racial significance of the hat that he's wearing. Because at the end of the day, when they say make America great again, when was it? Since this slogan has been out, I'm still looking for when America was great for black people. Even in today's time, where we have all the things and accoutrements that we didn't have 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's still not great for black people. I was talking to a friend today about how being a black man in America is probably one of the most difficult things you have to do. And that's something that women, particularly our black women, many of them don't understand. It's tough out here being a brother. So when you come home, you don't want to hear a lot of jibber jabber. You're fighting out there in the streets every day on your job with the white man, and then you got to come home and fight with your wife or your woman. That's why so many of our relationships are in shambles, because the woman at home don't understand that. I know she goes to a job and she fights too. So you would tend to believe instead of bringing your frustration home, let's have some peace. But I digress. Whatever this young man's problem is, and I'm not going to say was, is, I'm hoping he gets it corrected, because there is nothing. And I keep thinking about it, and I can't remember that movie where the world was flooding and there was this rich guy. He was I think he was an Arab, had all of this money, and it got to the point where he thought because of his money, he would get safe passage before other people. And he disrespected and discriminated a lot of different people. And come to find out that when it got time to get on the boat, they wouldn't let him on the boat. He didn't fit their criteria. Okay? That's what's going to happen to a lot of these black Republicans. You already see it happening. You see it happening, even those who supported Donald Trump. Look at his cabinet. He doesn't have any black people in his cabinet. Look at Byron Donalds. Look, he's gotten tacit approval from Donald Trump to run for governor of Florida. Tacit approval. He thought he was going to be one of the cabinet members. He wasn't. You have to understand something. Donald Trump is ran by a white supremacist, and white supremacists only want white people in power. They don't want women in power. They don't want black people, male or female, in power. You're seeing this, how they fired so many people in this administration that were black, that were leading in this country. This is a clear and present danger. And here was a young man, 18 years old, don't realize that he is walking with a target on his back. I wanted to pretend, or at least think that he was pretending and just joking, but the fact that he was wearing this hat proudly, he was not pretending. He could have been wearing the hat to try to generate conversation. Well, it worked on me. It worked on me. But I hope, see, here's the one thing when you meet these people, you all have got to understand you can't scream and holler at them and cuss them out and this, that, and the other. Try to have a conversation with him. And that's what I tried to do, was have a conversation and talk about whether or not he understood the significance of what he was doing. And even more so when he was 18, when I found out he was 18. I wanted to try to understand, dude, what's really going on here? I'm a little confused. So I wanted to bring that to you, man. That was kind of crazy, man. I met an alien. And I hope to God there aren't many more of them out there. At least the young ones. Because the young ones grow up to be stupid and ignorant fools. We got to take a break. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. On JoinedRadio.com.
Barbecue season is here, and you're still using that 99-cent goop full of chemical derivatives and high fructose corn syrup for your sauce? Stop, please. Get to ribrub.com now and save your next cookout with an array of all-natural rubs and sauces. Start with the Dynamic Rib Dust for seasoning and the Dynamic Rib Rub for flavor, and top off your grilled or smoked masterpiece with Dynamic Rib Juice. Don't forget the Dynamic Pepper Juice for just the right kick for those chicken wings. One other thing, you've got to try the delectably delicious Dynamic Rib Nuts. Can't decide? Order a Dynamic gift box and satisfy all of your cravings. Come on, give me your hand and let me take you to barbecue land at ribrub.com. That's RIBBRUBB.com, and we'll show you how to bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh yeah. Hi, I'm David W. Coleman, host of Black Focus Radio and the weekly sports magazine. We here at JoinedRadio.com would like to thank you for all the love and support you've given us. Our goal is to keep you inspired and informed daily with quality programming from gospel music, news, talk, and sports. Log on to JoinedRadio.com for the program lineup, and while there, be sure to make a donation. Then download our app and carry us anywhere in the world. Please continue to spread the word about JoinedRadio.com. And if you are an entrepreneur or have an upcoming event, or you'd like to start a show, let the professional writers and producers here at JoinedRadio.com help you get the word out. Call me at 615-554-0568 for more details. In the meantime, stay informed and inspired daily right here on JoinedRadio.com.
Welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me if you'd like to join the show. This segment I want to talk about something real quick, and there's more and more stuff popping up online. Many of you all don't realize that at one point, about 20 years ago, I had an organization called I Love My Children Too. If you've watched any of this show, periodically you see me wearing some of those old t-shirts. I did a Father's Family Affair, and there are a lot of brothers that are online now who is talking about child support. Okay? And I saw something the other day where, and I don't get into pop culture, but let's see, Russell Wilson and Ciara are married. When they were married, before they were married, Ciara dated this guy called Future. Okay? And Future, they had a child, a son. And I'm not getting into the relationship genre or anything like that. But Future lives with Sierra and Russell Wilson. Those of you who don't know, Russell Wilson is a NFL football player, won a Super Bowl. Okay, so it came out online the other day that Sierra had changed the last name of Future's son and put Wilson on his last name. And, you know, you're scrolling through social media and you see these things and you're like, So then it just kept popping up. So then I go into it and I realize, start reading some of the threads. Here's the bottom line on that, folks, is that unless that father has given up his parental rights, whatever's on that birth certificate is going to stay on that birth certificate. End of story. All right? Whatever, unless that man says, hey, yeah, you can change his name, or I'm giving up my parental rights, there's nothing the custodial parent can do to change that child's name. Nothing. Okay, so let's stop that stupidity. Now, why am I talking about this? It's because I've mentioned this a couple of shows ago, that it is now imperative, more so than anything else, and I'm proud of these young brothers who are out there giving tips on how people can minimize the damage when it comes to child support, because child support is ridiculous. End of story. It's ridiculous. And don't give me this stuff where you got to take care of your child. Okay? If I'm struggling, my child is struggling. This mess about if I get a raise, she gets a raise. No, that's not how it works. This has been going on for a long time, and we've been fighting it. So I am behind 100% of these brothers who are offering tips out there to help young men and men in general fight child support. It's not that you want to that you don't want to take care of your child. Many of these women use child support as a weapon against these men. So one of the things that you can do as a man, first and foremost, is join some of these groups, send them $10 or whatever the case may be, and then set up an organization where you can begin to lobby state legislators. And why do you need to do that? Because right now, DNA testing ought to be mandatory in every birth, whether you're married or you're not. I used to tell the story about how if I'm married and I go out and get another woman pregnant, it is my responsibility. I've got to take care of that child that I brought to this world. If my wife is married, we're married, and she goes out and she gets pregnant by some Joe Schmo out there on the streets, do you know who's responsible for that child? The husband. The state or the court say, we're not in the business of making bastard child. So the fact that she was married, the court presupposes that the man is the father, even though she's been out there screwing someone else. There's a method to my man. Let's just hang on. I'm getting there. Okay? So all of those things need to be changed. Of course, now with equality, if we're saying women are just as equal as men, then it shouldn't be automatic that just because you're female that you should get the child. There should be a litmus test of who is the better parent. And that better parent should be the custodial parent, whether that person is male or female. And quite often it is male. If you go out and look at the statistics of single parents, black males by far is the better single parent of any single parent. And males in general are usually the better parent of all ethnic groups. That's just a fact. So this story came across social media, and at first I was a little concerned that it was just too ridiculous for me to believe. It was a story of a man who had 3 children by his wife. He decided to do a DNA test, and come to find out that none of the children were his. Not 1, not 2, or number 3 were his. The weird thing about it, though, when the test came back, that it had some DNA peculiarities, which meant that it looked as though the children were kin to him, but he was not the father. Did y'all get what I just said? The DNA showed he was not the father, but he had relationships with the children when they tested their alleles. He put two and two together. He asked some questions. Come to find out that the doctor said that it had to be one of his relatives. Hello? To make a long story short, that this man, all three of his children were by three different relatives. He got up in arms. I would be livid. I cannot tell you what I would do if I found out that none of my children, I've been loving this woman, taking care of this woman, and they're not my children. And you not only were sleeping around, you were screwing my relatives, a brother and a cousin. Y'all had 3 kids together. And at the family reunions and all of the things that we did family-wise, y'all were literally laughing in my face. The young man snapped. He went up to her job. She saw him coming, and she ran. He caught her. He ran over her with his car multiple times. He got out of the car and pistol whipped her. And then he shot her multiple times. Now, she lived. Last I read, she lived. This man is going to spend some time in prison. If you want to say crime of passion, yeah, this was definitely a crime of passion. And those people out there who have the unmitigated gall to say, well, you raised those 3 children, they yours. No, not after you've lied to me. You lied about conception, and you lied about the birth, and you continue to lie. And in this case, you were sleeping with my brothers and cousins, and those were the fathers. Now, I'm not condoning what this man did. I can certainly empathize and sympathize with what he did. Because if you've ever been through a tough divorce, and if you ever have the thought that your woman was playing around on you, then you will have doubts in your mind whether or not the children are yours. That is one of the most unnerving things that could ever happen to you. And until that test comes back and says you are 100% the father of XYZ child, it's a burden. It's something that you all, as if you're not a man and you've never been through it, then it's something you cannot relate to. It's something that you cannot understand. It's just that debilitating mentally. You know how I know? Because I had those feelings at one point. I'm going to be honest with you. So I say all that to say this. There is no reason why mandatory DNA testing should not happen. It's quick. It takes a week. Sometimes if you want it expedited, it can go faster. It can do 3 days. There are DNA testing centers all over the country. I would tell men, before you sign a birth certificate, I don't care how much you love that woman. I don't care how much you think you love that woman. You should ask for a DNA test. Period. End of story. Because once you sign that birth certificate, you are all but admitting that you are the father, even though you may not be the father. So to keep the deception from happening, The courts have to step in. The state has to step in. If you are mandating that men must pay child support, or you want to say the non-custodial parent, 90% of those are men. If you are mandating that to be happening, then you must mandate DNA testing. Okay? And you say, well, who's going to pay for it? Well, it should be part of the divorce proceeding. It should be before you can put someone on child support. There must be DNA testing. But even before you get to that point, let's say you've been with this guy or this woman and y'all split up, y'all had a child, and now she wants to put you on child support. Well, you got to get a DNA test. That can be alleviated simply by having that DNA test in the hospital. As soon as she's born, that child is born, prick that blood, prick her blood, prick his blood. We'll see you and we'll talk to you in a week. It has to be done. It has to be done. Don't tell me you are a civilized society and you are saying that you cannot and you will not mandate DNA testing. And I advise all the brothers out there who are now fighting. I'm old and gray now, but I support you guys. Keep up the great work. DNA testing must be mandatory. We've got to take the top of the hour break. When we come back, we're going to talk about vaccinations. Okay? We're going to talk about vaccinations. We're also going to talk about Trump and Epstien. And then we're going to talk about what we must do. You're listening to Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices on joynetradio.com.
Hi, I'm David W. Coleman, host of Black Focus Radio and the weekly sports magazine. We here at joynetradio.com would like to thank you for all the love and support you've given us. Our goal is to keep you inspired and informed daily with quality programming from gospel music, news, talk, and sports. Log on to joynetradio.com for the program lineup, and while there, be sure to make a donation. Then download our app and carry us anywhere in the world. Please continue to spread the word about joynetradio.com. And if you are an entrepreneur or have an upcoming event or you'd like to start a show, let the professional writers and producers here at joynetradio.com help you get the word out. Call me at 615-554-0568 for more details. In the meantime, stay informed and inspired daily right here on joynetradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices. Central Arkansas, surrounding areas, and the nation. Get ready. Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855-525-5683. So here's your host, David W. Coleman.
Welcome back to the second hour of Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me. If you'd like to join the show, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Just go out and search for Black Focus Radio. Look for the golden microphone and the red, black, and green color scheme. You can't miss me. We're there. We update a new show every Monday. And then if you want to see, well, let me see what this guy's really all about, go and listen to the old shows. Go check those out. You know, we straightforward to the point. We speak truth to power. We pull no punches. All right? Everybody is fair game. Also, don't forget, we're in the middle of a one-man campaign. Just don't say it. That don't say it means the N-word. Let's stop it. Please. Okay? Do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Build yourself up. Build your friends up. Build your brothers, your sisters, all of the people out there that you know. Positive power is pure energy, and speak truth to power simply by not saying the N-word. Just don't say it. Okay? Don't forget our sponsors, ribrub.com, RIBBRUBB.com, Bake It, Grill It, Shake It, oh yeah, and don't forget to give me your hand, because I'll take you down through barbecue land. Yeah. And joinnetradio.com. Time for advertising. If you got a business, small business, hit me up. Let's see what we can do about some advertising. Okay? A lot of stuff to talk about this hour. And I want to start with vaccinations. You know, I remember one of my friends when we were in school, and I can remember going to elementary school, and before you could get in school, you had to have shots. And these shots were designed to keep you from getting the mumps, the measles, the chicken pox, the whooping cough, all of these poxes that are out there that, you know, could kill people. The diseases. Did you know up until 1871, the life expectancy of a human in America was 35 years old? Did you know that? It wasn't until later on when science started beginning. Notice I said science. It wasn't until later on when science, you know that thing where you study, you have a hypothesis and you test it out, then you have peer testing to verify that something that you said about something was true. You know, it's called science. When science began to figure out how to cure and stop diseases, the life expectancy rate got a lot longer. I'm 64 years old. Just think about it. If I would have died at 35, that was 30 years ago. I wouldn't even be here. But because of science, hello, you're here today. Because of science, that diabetes or that cancer that you beat, or even the broken leg that you have, because of science, hello, you are here today. I remember in the first grade, or second grade, or third grade, wherever it was at Mitchell, I remember a girl by the name of Myrita Daniels, a friend of mine. I grew up with Myrita, known her all my life. Well, she's passed on now, God rest her soul. But she didn't like taking shots. And boy, she ran all over the school. They had to chase her down and literally had to hold her down. Ultimately had to get her mama to come up to the school because she wasn't going to get in school unless she had a shot. Those shots. The MMRA, I think that's what they call it. You know, the funny thing about it, there were friends of mine who caught the measles. There were friends of mine who caught the mumps. If you've ever seen somebody with the mumps, their jaws just swell up. They could go deaf. They could die from the mumps. I knew a girl, she had the chicken pox. And the chicken pox, it makes welts come up all over your body, all on your face, your lips, your toes, your vaginal area, your pubic area. The chicken pox is terrible. And then the bad thing about it, it leaves marks if you scratch. And this young lady, for the longest, I knew this girl all through junior high and high school. She had those marks all over her legs from what she had when she was a child. Beautiful young lady, but you know what marred her body? Were those black spots all over her body from the chicken pox. I loved her to death. She was a good friend. But why am I telling you this? There weren't many of us who got those diseases because there was something that occurred. That something was science that said we can create what is called herd immunity. Now, what is herd immunity? If everybody is getting a vaccination, then what that will ultimately do, the majority of the people who has the vaccinations, those who have those dangerous diseases, it will minimize an infection taking place that could close down a school, a city. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, let's just take Texas right now. The measles, which at one point been eradicated. In fact, it had gotten to so bad about the measles, whenever the measles showed up in America, it was like, you know what, America, you got that measles vaccine. We don't want no parts of that. So we just going to go on to another country. And then you know what America did? America started sending those vaccines to other countries. And you know what happened? In those other countries, the measles said, whoa, y'all making it hard on a germ nowadays. I can't go nowhere without y'all got that measles vaccine. Measles had literally been eradicated in America and other parts of the world. And then in Texas, there were some parents who decided that they were not going to get vaccinations. There was something going on with the vaccinations. My kid is this, my kid is that. Now, let me tell you, the vaccination program has been around 60, 70 years. And there has been no, let me say, zero ties to vaccinations causing some type of illness in our children. So those parents in Texas decided that they were not going to vaccinate those children, at least some of them. Let me tell you what happened. There were over 600 hospitalized children and adults, by the way, because guess what happens? If your child contracts measles and you live with a grandparent and that grandparent is older and he is immune deficient for whatever reasons, he too can get the measles. And now your child has infected not only himself, but grandpa and the whole damn house. What if you have an infant there? You understand what I'm saying here? 2 people died, 2 children died, 600 hospitalized. So last week, Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo said the state is going to eliminate all vaccine mandates. Okay? He also threw in the word slavery. Anytime you use slavery as a reason to do something, that's never good. So the state of Florida is now going to say, you know what? Y'all don't have to get the MMR. Y'all don't have to get the chickenpox vaccine. Let me ask you a question. Smallpox was a terrible, terrible disease. And as a matter of fact, it was so terrible, and white people knew how terrible it was. When they were trying to get rid of the Native American, they gave them smallpox. They gave them blankets that was laced with smallpox so that they would get sick and die. Yeah, they did that. Should we not get vaccinated for smallpox? I'm just asking the question. Because you've got a bunch of idiots. And yeah, I know this guy is the Surgeon General. And when I first heard that, I was thinking, okay, I heard him speak. I didn't know the man was black. Dude, you're a damn fool. Because here's the one thing I'm going to tell you here. And then I want to talk about this RFK hearing last week. I don't know anyone. I'm 64. And throughout my life, growing up, I don't remember any of my friends. I think there were 1 or 2 who may have caught the measles or the mumps. And I can't remember, but there were a couple. But I don't remember any of my friends dying. from the mumps, the whooping cough, the measles. What's going to happen now is that these kids are going to go to school. They're going to infect other people, and we're going to have a mass epidemic in this country if we're not careful, because we let some idiots run this country. This is crazy. Which brings me to the hearing last week, the Oversight Committee hearing, where RFK, who is the head of Health and Human Services, didn't know how many people died during COVID. Did you hear what I said? By the way, RFK was the guy who went to this island nation and talked about not getting vaccinations and eschewing the science of vaccinations, even after 50, 60 years of success. You know, if there's something successful for 50, 60 years, you know, you got to probably think, okay, yeah, you know, that's, yeah. It's kind of like 1 + 1 = 2. You know, that's been around for centuries. You know, we figured that out. Yeah, that's proven. Now, I know Jerry Jones said 1 + 1. They got to figure out 1 + 1, how 1 + 1 = 3, but we know he's a kook. And what we saw last week in that hearing with RFK, we saw a kook. Okay? We saw someone who is in over his head and is using, well, let me ask you a question. Why the hell would you put someone in that position who is not even a doctor? Someone who has not went through clinical trials. Someone who has not sat down in a laboratory and tested out different, you know, strains of viruses and cures and whatever the chemical biology. Someone who just thinks that he's smarter than everybody else. Someone who sat in a committee last week and called everybody a lie, including the National Association of Pediatrics and doctors all over this world, thousands of them, who had written letters saying that this man has no business being in his position. He called every one of them a lie. There's a problem here. Because, see, this is more than just rhetoric here. This is really about our children. And when you have someone who doesn't even believe in vaccinations, and now you've got the state of Florida Attorney General who is saying they're going to eliminate the mandate for kids going to school. Now, let me ask you a question. So they're saying that COVID is slowly beginning to rear its head again. So if that's the case, should we get vaccinated for COVID? See, some of these same people who claims that COVID and what Donald Trump did under his administration was getting that vaccine out in 9 months. Usually it takes 4 or 5 years. It saved a lot of lives. We got to give him credit for that. It was under his administration. Operation Warp Speed is what they called it. It saved a lot of lives. If you remember, I had 17 people that I knew personally to die from COVID. During that period of time, my mother died. Now, she didn't die from COVID, but it was a rough time for me. And here's what I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, that COVID vaccine worked. I happily ran to take it. Now, there were some stupid people who didn't. And some of those people, guess what happened? They got COVID. Okay? I'm not going to believe the science. So why is it you're not going to believe the science again? Can you tell me? You don't believe in science? Oh, let me ask you a question. Do you drive a car? Yeah. Guess what? You drive that car because of science. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever flown on a plane? Yeah. You know why that plane flies? It's because of science. Hello? Have you ever turned on a light bulb in your house? You got lights in your house? Yeah. You got a light bill? Yeah. Do you realize that you have a light bill because of science? Well, I don't want the damn light bill. I gotta pay it, but I don't want it. Yeah, but you know it's for science. Do you use a computer? I said, wait a minute. You got a phone, don't you? What is that in your hand? Is that well, this is a phone. No, bro, that ain't a phone. That's a computer. The phone is the app. What you have is storage, memory, and a processor. That makes a computer. And guess what? You really only need memory and a processor. You don't even need storage to have a computer. It's a computer. You know why it's a computer? No, because it's science. So I'm a little confused here. Everything you literally do on a daily basis has to do with science. When you take medicine for your high blood pressure or your diabetes or for your headache or for your cold, when you go and buy some over-the-counter medication like Tylenol or whatever you take, even when you buy supplements to go to the gym, you know why you buy that stuff? You buy it because some little geek person in a room has tested that stuff and said, this is what it will do for you. You know what that is? That's science. Everything you do has to do with science. Don't give me this Bible stuff. This is science. The reason we know about the pyramids is science. The reason that I know up until 1871, the life expectancy was 35 years old, that's science. The reason you lived from the life expectancy of 35 now to some of us upwards of 100 years old is because of science. The reason you juice is because of science. Someone has told you. By the way, up until 1871, you know that those people lived an agrarian diet. They didn't have processed meats. They didn't have fats and plastics and all that other stuff. They ate free range and they still died at 35. Why? Because of science has changed all of that. It's science that has changed all of that. It's science that allows me to sit here today. You know what? It's science that allows you to look at this video or hear this video or listen to your radio or make music. All of that is science. And you mean to tell me that y'all are going to allow someone who clearly was a fool tell you about whether or not you should vaccinate your children, your most precious commodity? I don't know about you, but my children are my most precious commodity. And you know what? They are grown. And you know what else? I don't give a damn. They are still my most precious commodity. I call them heart and soul. And without one or the other, I would be nothing. And I'm going to tell you that no jackleg wannabe conspiracy theorist is going to tell me about science. I'm going to listen to the people that know. It's like investing in the stock market. Would you go to your homeboy and say, hey man, I want to invest $10,000. Which stocks should I pick? You gonna listen to him or you gonna go to a stockbroker? It's really that simple. It's that simple. He should resign. If you didn't listen to that hearing last week, wow. And I listened to all 3 hours. Unbelievable. Even the Republicans on that committee was floored, was shocked. Well, you shouldn't have been. Many of y'all confirmed him by voting him in the office. It's ridiculous. We've got more ridiculousness coming up in the next segment. We're going to take a break. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices on joinetradio.com.
Dynamic Dave for joinetradio.com. I'm inviting all small businesses to contact me at 855-525-5683 and let Joinet Radio set up an advertising package specifically designed with your business in mind. This is a great opportunity for small businesses to get your products on the air. Do you want to get the word out about a new business? Joinet Radio is for you. Do you want to advertise your event or social gathering? Joinet Radio is for you. Do you preach or teach? Do it right here on joinetradio.com. Call me, Dynamic Dave, at 855-525-5683 or go to joinetradio.com and review our great lineup of shows. Let's help each other and let's get your products in the hands of consumers across the country. Call me, Dynamic Dave, at joinetradio.com at 855-525-5683. I'll talk to you soon.
Coleman's Dynamic Products would like to thank you for all the support you've given us over the years. Our growth could not have happened without your purchases and word of mouth to your friends and family. That says you believe and trust us to provide Coleman's Dynamic Products with no fillers and all natural ingredients. We began with our flagship product, Rib Rub, and now it has expanded into snacks, seasonings, salts, rib juice, and pepper juice. We could not have done it without you. I'm David W. Coleman, founder and president, and I want to personally thank you for the encouraging words and support. Coleman's Dynamic Products will continue to be the best dry marinades, seasonings, and sauces you've ever put in your mouth. That's ribrub.com, RIBBRUBB, and you know what we like to say, bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh, yeah.
Pigskin, check. Round ball, check. Hard ball, check. Hockey puck, check. Burning rubber, check. We got it all on the weekly sports page with David Coleman. What else do you need? Did I say food? Can't have sports without food. What kind of show is this again?
A sports show.
Oh, okay. Pass me those rib nuts.
Yeah, we do have it all and a whole lot more with me, Dynamic David Coleman, on the weekly sports magazine.
Welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me if you'd like to join the show. As I told you a couple of weeks ago, where it's been a while now, everything that I see on the Jeffrey Epstien saga, I post on my wall. And I'm hoping you would do the same. This thing cannot die. And the more you learn, the more you realize that there's a problem in the White House. There's a serious problem in the White House. We're going to get to that in a moment. But last Wednesday, some of the Epstein survivors made it to Washington, D.C., met with a lot of, some of the congressmen who wanted to meet with them. There are still Republicans who are doubting their story, which boggles my mind. Even Nancy Mace, the day before the press conference, who apparently had been sexually abused before, even she walked out of the room crying. Maybe she had a flashback. From what I understand, sexual assault victims never get over that assault. And from personal experience, I would agree. Unfortunately, in my lifetime, I dated a woman who had been sexually assaulted. Beautiful woman. But there were always problems when it came to intimacy, or there would be flashbacks. I'm giving you some insight in my life. What happened to these young women? And I didn't understand the depth and the breadth of all of what really went on with Epstein. And you don't understand it until you go out and you watch Filthy Rich on Netflix. It is an abomination of what Epstein did to those young ladies. How he preyed on those young ladies who were living in West Palm Beach. How he used those young ladies to bring other young girls to him. These were not young ladies. These were young girls. They were 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And was also aided and abetted by Ghislaine Maxwell. And by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell often participated in threesomes with these young girls, who is now in a nice little prison in Texas. So hearing their stories I was like, yeah, tell your story, girl. Tell your story, because it needs to be told. Every one of them. And what I enjoyed about the press conference is the fact that these young ladies made a very startling point. That if you don't make the files public, then we're going to compile our own list. Because see, those young ladies know who sexually assaulted them. We know Prince Philip was one of them. We know that. Okay? Who else? There's been inferences that Bill Clinton was one of them. We know Epstein. Certainly there was inferences about Donald Trump. Who are these other men? Remember, 4,745 transactions, totaling over $1 billion in one account for Jeffrey Epstein. Who was paying this money and why? This man was flying these young girls all over the world to different countries, back and forth to New York, to Mar-a-Lago, all throughout this country. Who were these other men? And why, as Senator Ron Wyden said, why hadn't you followed the money? And who was involved? Because just like there are multiple banks and companies who was involved in the slave trade, who laundered money, insurance companies, who are those companies and those banks that allowed those transactions to go through? That's what, see this, I've been saying for a while now. This is bigger than Donald Trump. And what Donald Trump is doing is trying to cover up for some of these fat, rich cats. It makes you wonder. And this is just conjecture on my part. I have no evidence to this to support this. But it makes you wonder, why did all of those companies say, hey, here's $10 million. Hey, Donald, I got $15 million over here for you. We good, dog? It makes you wonder why these companies were so eager to capitulate to this 34-count felon. Why were they so ready to roll over? That's the one thing that I can't understand. And that's the one question that someone needs to look into. And the only thing that I can look at and see that's right before us is this Jeffrey Epstein stuff, these FBI files. Late last week, it was said that Pam Bundy and a Republican operative said that, hey, they want to release the files, but they're going to scrub all the Republican names, and they're just going to release the names of people who were Democrats. So are you saying that there were Democrats in Congress that were part of Epstein? And now that we know, and this was a secret recording, now that we know that you're going to scrub the Democratic names, how is that going to give you any credibility from a Trump administration standpoint? I'm curious. I'm curious, man. How's that going to give you any credibility whatsoever? Well, it's not. It's not going to do a damn thing for you, because people want to know what happened. And clearly, those young women were sexually assaulted. So here's the thing. By the way, you know, we got to drink some tea because I'm shouting out to South Park because they seem to be the only credible organization out there who's looking for answers, or at least pointing people in directions that people are afraid to go. It boggles my mind that there are so many people on national media we don't have any evidence that Donald Trump did anything. We've talked about this before. Your friend was a pedophile. Your friend was a pimp. So was his girlfriend. You got pictures hanging out with this guy. You were a former owner of a teen pageant. You bragged about the fact that you loved going back to the dressing room when the women were half dressed so you can look at them. You bragged about the fact that you would sleep with a 10-year-old in 20 years. I mean, in 10 years after she became an adult. You were telling a 10-year-old that you would screw her if she was 10 years older. What are you doing telling a 10-year-old that? So you're telling me, just with all of the if this was a police investigation and your friend was a drug dealer, and every time you saw you and him, y'all were hanging out, kicking it, he gets arrested. The police come at you, you say, oh, that was him. I don't do drugs. I didn't do drugs. That might be true. But do you not think that the police is going to look you up and down, left and right? They're going to totally exonerate you before they take your word. And even still, they're going to say, well, why are you hanging out with a drug dealer? The same questions has to be asked with Donald Trump. If you knew and you had to know he was a pedophile, don't give me this crap I didn't know. Look, I've got some friends. I know some of them did some shady stuff. Don't want to hang out with you, bro. And even if I didn't know and see you do the shady stuff, there are rumors. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to that dude. Hey, man, look, let me tell you something. I'm trying to get in your business. But so-and-so said you did this, and this. Hello? He's going to deny? Or he's going to say, man, let me just tell you, da-da-da-da-da. You mean to tell me they never had those conversations? You mean to tell me when y'all were drinking a bottle of Chianti and y'all kick back and you watching the videos? Look, you've been in Jeffrey Epstein's house. You didn't see those pictures of those naked women? Those young girls described them. They were all over his house. You, Donald Trump, then say, yo, Jeffrey, what's up with this picture right here? And then when you went in the other room and you saw, Jeffrey, why you got all these pictures of these naked girls? And by the way, according to reports, some of those pictures were pictures of young girls. You don't say, hey, Jeffrey, why you got all these pictures of these nude young girls in here? Y'all were friends. Y'all kicked it. You went places together. You were on his plane. You didn't ask that question. I say all this to say that he knew. And I got a feeling he was involved. There is one young lady out there who has said that Trump sexually assaulted her, allegedly, when she was 14 years old. No one is even talking about that. By the way, you do know, what was it, 8, 10 girls at that press conference on Wednesday? You know there are hundreds of them, right? There are some that don't want to be identified. There are others who might see those young girls and say, hey, I've been wanting to get this off my chest for years. Here's my opportunity. Let me go join the fray. We have to ask a question. We cannot allow this man to obfuscate the point here and allow Republicans to try to run interference, because the question is, and it keeps ringing in my mind, that if you didn't do anything wrong, why are you doing so much to keep people from knowing the truth? Who are you protecting? And I believe it runs the gamut across the country with these rich white men. Because see, these white men think they are invincible. The part of the reason that and by the way, there has been rumors that allegedly Peter Thiel is one of those people. Yeah. If you don't know who Peter Thiel is, you might need to go look him up. Hello? So who are you protecting, Donald? Why is it so important that you need to protect these people? That's the question that we need to be asking. Because if you weren't involved, and then late last week, here comes Donald Trump was a FBI informant. Please stop. You're making up all kinds of lies to try to run from this monster. This monster is you. When you look in the mirror, it's you. So let's be real about this. We cannot let this die. We need answers. I'm hoping that these young women will produce a list. But it really goes back to what I've been saying all along, is that there is no way that regular folks should be voting these millionaires and billionaires into office anymore. If nothing else, something that has been exposed to us all is the fact that these people are dangerous and they think they are above the law. This whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein and how he evaded going to prison for so long when many people knew he was doing this. He did it because he had money and he had friends in high places. He could have been stopped a long time before he got stopped, but someone alerted him that he was under investigation. And when the Palm Beach Police Department went to his home to look for evidence, one of the things they discovered is that many of the hard drives and video camera equipment had been removed. How did Jeffrey Epstein know that? Because there were people in high places who alerted him. How did he end up with a sweetheart deal where he could have his own bodyguards in jail and leave every day and go to work? And oh, by the way, I just found out last week that while he was going to work, he was still sexually assaulting young girls. Even with him being sentenced for this work release program. Bro, this is crazy. And you're crazy if you think you need to just not pay attention. Because this runs the gamut. People could, well, there is no list. There may not be a list, but Jeffrey Epstein did not sexually assault all of those women. So to hear those young women say, if you don't release the list, then we're going to release our list. Because they know who those men are. They know. Even one of the attorneys suggested that it goes all the way to the top. What's the top? It's just getting good, folks. No, we don't want to shut this down yet. We don't want to we want to know. And even if Donald Trump was to kill over and die today, the American public still needs to know. Because it speaks. And look, would you be surprised? See, based on what I know about history, I'm not surprised about American corporations. I'm not surprised about the men that run them. I'm not. So would you be surprised? I'm just saying, this stinks to high heaven. We're We're going to take our last break. When we come back, it's What We Must Do. I hope you're enjoying the show. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices on joinetradio.com.
Barbecue season is here, and you're still using that 99-cent goop full of chemical derivatives and high fructose corn syrup for your sauce? Stop, please. Get to ribrub.com now and save your next cookout with an array of all-natural rubs and sauces. Start with the Dynamic Rib Dust for seasoning and the Dynamic Rib Rub for flavor, and top off your grilled or smoked masterpiece with Dynamic Rib Juice. Don't forget the Dynamic Pepper Juice for just the right kick for those chicken wings. One other thing, you've got to try the delectably delicious Dynamic Rib Nuts. Can't decide? Order a Dynamic gift box and satisfy all of your cravings. Come on, give me your hand and let me take you to barbecue land at ribrub.com. That's RIBBRUBB.com, and we'll show you how to bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh yeah. Dynamic Dave for joinetradio.com. I'm inviting all small businesses to contact me at 855-525-5683 and let Joinet Radio set up an advertising package specifically designed with your business in mind. This is a great opportunity for small businesses to get your products on the air. Do you want to get the word out about a new business? Joinet Radio is for you. Do you want to advertise your event or social gathering? Joinet Radio is for you. Do you preach or teach? Do it right here on joinetradio.com. Call me, Dynamic Dave, at 855-525-5683 or go to joinetradio.com and review our great lineup of shows. Let's help each other and let's get your products in the hands of consumers across the country. Call me, Dynamic Dave, at joinetradio.com at 855-525-5683. I'll talk to you soon.
Coleman's Dynamic Products would like to thank you for all the support you've given us over the years. Our growth could not have happened without your purchases and word of mouth to your friends and family. That says you believe and trust us to provide Coleman's Dynamic Products with no fillers and all natural ingredients. We began with our flagship product, Rib Rub, and now it has expanded into snacks, seasonings, salts, rib juice, and pepper juice. We could not have done it without you. I'm David W. Coleman, founder and president, and I want to personally thank you for the encouraging words and support. Coleman's Dynamic Products will continue to be the best dry marinades, seasonings, and sauces you've ever put in your mouth. That's ribrub.com, RIBBRUBB, and you know what we like to say, bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh, yeah.
Pigskin, check. Round ball, check. Hard ball, check. Hockey puck, check. Burning rubber, check. We got it all on the weekly sports page with David Coleman. What else do you need? Did I say food? Can't have sports without food. What kind of show is this again?
A sports show.
Oh, okay. Pass me those rib nuts.
Yeah, we do have it all and a whole lot more with me, Dynamic David Coleman, on the weekly sports magazine.
Welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me if you'd like to join the show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to grow our listenership, so get out there and like, share, and subscribe. And also, don't forget to support our sponsors, joinetradio.com and ribrub.com. So, we've been talking a lot today about a lot of different things, but we're going to get to the segment What I Love is What We Must Do. And in this segment, I talk about things that we need to do to make ourselves better as a people. Okay? One of the things that we shouldn't be doing is trying to wage war with people who look like us. I saw something on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, well, it's been about a week ago, where black women in America was trying to have a boycott of African women braiding hair. Really? What the hell are you doing? Why don't you go to those African women and say, hey, look, how y'all braiding hair? What y'all doing? Why y'all getting all these customers? Let me ask you a question. Those of you who believe in that. When McDonald's came out with their burgers. What did Burger King do? We gonna have a burger. McDonald's said, hey, 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce and cheese on a sesame seed bun. I can't believe I remember that. That was a commercial. Burger King came out with, where's the beef? Have it your way here at Burger King. Then you had Wendy's. Then you had Hardee's. When McDonald's came out, did any of those burger joints say, hey, look, McDonald's got the corner on the market of burgers. We not going to do burgers anymore. What about Kentucky Fried Chicken? When Kentucky Fried Chicken and the Colonel came out with those 11 herbs and spices or whatever they are, did Popeye say, hey, look, we're not going to do chicken. What about churches? Church said, we ain't doing chicken because, KFC got the corner on the market. Hell no. They advertised, they sold their products, and they're still. What about pizza? Pizza Hut, Papa John's, pick a pizza joint, any of them. What about all these mom and pop pizza joints? Did they say, hey, look, Papa John's, Pizza Hut, all them, they got the corner on the market. We not going to do pizza. Hello? When Subway hit, and Jimmy John's, all these private delis, and they say, hey, you know what? Subway and Jimmy John's, they getting all the customers. We not going to do it. We not going to do deli sandwiches anymore. Hello? Right here in the DMV in Maryland, every corner, there's a damn crab house. There's a lump crab everywhere up here. Crab cakes, crab this, everywhere. What if the person who initially set up the crab house and everybody else said, you know what? Poppy's Crab House already got a crab house. We ain't gonna do crab. You see how silly that sounds? Instead of going to those businesses or organizing to try to get black people to boycott another black person because that black person is struggling just like you, why not go to them and say, what are you doing right? Or better still, find out what they're doing right and do it right yourself. Or better still, create your own. That's what I did with my rib rub. I didn't like the barbecue sauce that was on the shelf. I didn't like the rub that was on the shelf. I didn't like the hot sauce that was on the shelf. I ate it. I decided to make my own. And you know what? I'm not a gigantic conglomerate. But you know what? I'm proud of my sauce, and I will match up my product with anybody's on the shelf. That's how you do it. You don't allow white supremacy to turn you against another black person, like that alien that I met and talked about earlier in the show. You don't allow white supremacy to think that you use his own tactics to discriminate against people that look like you. You don't allow that to happen. That's pure stupidity. What we should be doing is banding together. We should be banding together to work with and for one another for success. That's the only way that we can solve this problem. Because we do have a problem. We do have a problem. And if we want to solve our own problems, then we have to start looking inward. I say all the time, when was the last time you shopped at a black business? Can you make a commitment right now? And we know that it's going to be tough this year based on the economy. But can you make a commitment right now that 25% of the money that you're going to spend for the upcoming holiday season is going to go to black businesses? Can you make that commitment? 25%, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's ribrub.com, it don't matter. Can you make that commitment, brothers and sisters? Because you should. You should. Because that is the only way that we're going to be successful, is make a commitment to one another that we are going to support one another. Period. End of story. We also got to make a commitment that we got to stop buying into all these conspiracy theories. We got to believe in science. As black people, you should believe in science more than anybody else. You know why? Because black people were the first scientists. Hello. Black people were the first scientists. You know how I know? Look at the pyramids. That was built on science. They were so scientifically sound that no one today can figure out how those pyramids were built. Even with our knowledge today, no one has given a credible account of why those pyramids were built or how they were built. Hello? Without machinery that we have to build skyscrapers. It's about science. We've got to stop listening to those people who are nothing but politicians who are in office to pad their pockets. There should not be a millionaire in politics. I don't care. It shouldn't be a millionaire in politics. Unless that millionaire has pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. And then you still need to look at him with the side eye. Because when you look at this big, beautiful debacle of a bill, it clearly points to the fact that all of those people gave themselves tax breaks and they're living off the American dime. These are the same people who don't want to disclose or stop making stock trades while they're in Congress. These are the same people who will sell you down the river and not give a damn about you. We have to start paying attention to that. We have to start understanding that no one can save us from us, for us, but us. That's how that works. So as we move into a small election season, and then after this year, we're going to move into a larger season, it's time for us to start saying, hey, this ain't going to work anymore. We're tired. We've had enough. Because this is ridiculous. I've had enough. It's so funny that when you look at some of the things that are going on, we are our own worst enemies. And we've got to stop that, folks. We've got to stop that. James Baldwin once said, "It took me many years of vomiting up all the filth I've been taught about myself and half believed before I was able to walk on this earth as though I had a right to be here." You have a right to be here. You see, it took me a long time too. People ask me, well, how can you say those things and talk about those things on your show? Aren't you afraid? What should I be afraid of? I'm 64 years old. I've lived a great life, and I am not about to allow any entity to tell me what to do. I am a man. I believe in myself. I believe in my people. And we've got to start using the things that are important to us to demand justice. And that means voting with your dollars, and that means voting at the ballot. And we need to stop voting in these rich people. And lastly, before I go, we need to remember how much power we have. We're in the middle of football season, or it just started. Have you looked to see how many of those little black boys are out there on the field? I'm about to compose a letter to the powers that be, the Urban League, the NAACP, the National Action Network, all of these people, Roland Martin, all of these people, and ask the question, based on what we know is happening with the Republican Party and what they're trying to do to this country and target black people, isn't it time for us to make a stand? And the best way to make a stand is to affect their pocketbook. And how can we affect their pocketbooks more so than anywhere else? That is in entertainment. And what would happen if every one of those little black boys decided to walk off the field. That's power. That's courage. The question is, do we have enough power and courage? Do we have that was deemed to us by our ancestors, who were kings and queens, who were sold into slavery, who was abused and neglected through the black codes and Jim Crow? Do we have that power that they had? That's the question that we all should be asking ourselves. And you know what else? That is what we must do. I hope you enjoyed the show. We've got to get out of here. Don't forget, we're on every Monday live with a new show. Hope you will check it out. And not only that, make sure you like, share, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're trying to build our listenership. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And support our sponsors, ribrub.com, RIBBRUBB.com, and joinetradio.com. And last but not least, if you do nothing else, can you go for a day? Pick today and not use the N-word. And then if you can go through the day without using the N-word, and then try it for 2 days, and then extend it for a week. And in other words, you'll be saying just what I say. Just don't say it. Thank you for listening to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices on joinetradio.com.
You've been listening to Black Focus, where we discuss our issues with our solutions and our voices. Join us every weekday afternoon at 1 p.m. on joinetradio.com.